Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment number 42 to H.R. 8998, which prohibits the finalization of the Draft Resource Management Plan, or RMP, revision for the Bureau of Land Management's Rock Springs Field Office. This RMP revision severely restricts grazing, mining, energy production, recreation, and other activities on 3.6 million acres of land in Wyoming. The BLM field districts are required to update their RMPs in accordance with the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, and in 2011, the Rock Springs Field Office started that process. The draft revision that was released for public comment in 2023 has gained national attention for its unprecedented policy shift to prohibit access, management, and use to literally millions of acres of land. The RMP contains 4 alternatives for the planning area, including Alternative A, which amounts to no action, BLM's preferred Alternative B, which would have tremendous negative consequences for the state and the nation, Alternative C, which severely restricts recreational activities, and Alternative D, which was not viewed favorably by the local community. Unsurprisingly, the BLM chose the plan that Wyoming and the nation are most opposed to in terms of its preference. In total, under the preferred alternative, about 2.5 million acres would not be available for new rights-of-way. This would be an increase of more than 480% in acreage off limits to important things like power lines, pipelines, and maintaining roads. The RMP severely restricts vehicle access, including 4,505 miles of routes to all use, and then removing an additional 10,000 miles of routes from the transportation network. The plan even calls for limiting vehicles to designated roads across the landscape, but it doesn't clarify which roads will be designated for travel. The draft RMP designates 1.8 million acres of the planning area as areas of critical environmental concern, which undermines all opportunities for economic development, particularly as it relates to energy production and mineral extraction. This is an increase of 1.3 million acres when compared to current BLM policies. The Rock Springs RMP is bad policy from beginning to end. I encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of my amendment, and Mr. Chairman, with that I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Maine seek recognition?
I claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is one more controversial poison pill policy rider that sadly shows that extremist Republicans are not interested in bills that can gain bipartisan support and become law. In accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act and the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976, the BLM drafted the proposed draft resource management plan and environmental impact statement for Rock Springs and provided a 90-day comment period. This amendment prohibits the BLM from finalizing, implementing, administering, or enforcing an updated, comprehensive, and environmentally adequate framework for managing uses of public lands and resources. We are here to protect the welfare of the American public and preserve our public lands and resources for future generations. The land considered for protection has low prospects for oil and gas yields and includes national treasures such as petroglyphs, North America's largest sand dunes, mitigation corridors for bighorn sheep, mule deer, and elk. Once again, my Republican colleagues are disregarding the law, trying to circumvent the rigorous process that is in place to update resource management plans. This amendment also nullifies the public comments that have been collected by legislating the outcome. We cannot close our eyes to the impacts of climate change we are experiencing, as our economy, health, livelihoods, food, security, and quality of life all depend on healthy ecosystems. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment and focus instead on addressing climate change and being good stewards of our public lands and resources for the benefit of future generations. I reserve my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman is recognized.
This amendment is not just about mining or energy and mineral extraction. This RMP is one of the largest land grabs we've ever seen, and it impacts everything from grazing to recreation. Grazing will be severely impacted by the preferred alternative of this RMP, including through a ban on livestock grazing and big game parturition habitat during the birthing season, prohibiting range improvement projects such as troughs, reservoirs, and fences, and suspending AUMs currently authorized within the planning area. Perhaps what's most disheartening about this RMP is the fact that the BLM chose to move forward with the least studied plan out of all of the alternatives. In fact, Sweetwater County's Public Lands Director verified in a hearing a few months ago that the BLM spent about 1 week out of 11 years on the preferred alternative. 1 week. What is now its preferred alternative is clearly in violation of FLPMA and the obligation to take a hard look at the alternative chosen. A former BLM employee who worked on this RMP testified in front of the state legislators in Wyoming that the preferred alternative was created as a, quote, bookend alternative, and mentioned that they spent 1 week on alternative B and then the next 6 years on alternative D. It was also said that a reporter that this plan, quote, takes the public off of the public lands. The alternative laid out in this plan, particularly alternative B, will destroy Wyoming's local economy and dramatically decrease the development of energy resources needed to power this country, undermine our national security, and destroy our local livestock industry. We cannot go on like this, and I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, which would nullify the implementation of this monstrosity of a plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and with that, I yield back.